On Sunday the 23rd of June 1940, around 1,000 islanders gathered here, ready to board the 6 small cargo boats that would carry them to England and safety. It would be 5.5 long years before they returned. These are their memories.
Well, I remember an awful lot about the evacuation because I was the last to get married at the church, my husband, on 2 days before we evacuated. So it's very, very clear in my mind. And we'd only decided on the Monday when position was getting bad. The boats were coming over from France with the refugees in. And we had a young Salvation Army couple here, and she was Jersey, and she could speak Jersey French. So she understood what they were saying, or near enough. And we heard how they were pillaging the villages and taking their girls, and my husband looked, well, not then, my young man, he looked at me and he said, I don't know, I think we'd be better if we were married.
We had at that time a Judge French, who was similar in position to the bailiff of Guernsey, Crown appointed. And he was a superb chap, well respected, well liked by the islanders. And he was the right man in the right place at the right time to organise the evacuation of the people to England, an evacuation which went off very smoothly indeed.
He asked if the people would go, or if they wanted to stay, or if they would go, and apparently they all shouted they would go, and he said he would try and arrange for ships to come, and there would be very short notice. And of course the next morning he asked for some of the men to wait around the cliffs and that to see if the ships came, and they did, and the church bells rang, and we had just under 2 hours to get ready.
Everybody, I think, expected to be able to come back to the island within weeks or a few months, never 5.5 years. They may have thought differently about that at the time. But the war was close on our doorstep. The Germans had passed down past Cherbourg, and the coast of France was all in flames and smoke, and we had evacuees coming from France to Alderney to get out of the way. And for that early part of 1940, it was quite horrendous in the island.
We were on the last boat, very last boat to leave, and saw the animals walking along the breakwater, the cows and the pigs and all sorts were running. We're going along the breakwater. It's quite a sight, really, but, not a good sight. But that was our last glimpse of Alderney before we came back. Mm.
Being so young when we left here, it was excitement more than anything else. My sister was the one that was in charge with Mum. She packed our working clothes, playing clothes, instead of packing our good ones, because we were only going for a couple of weeks and we didn't want to ruin our good clothes.
We had the idea in our heads that, 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps we'll be back again. And so one packed one's summer clothes, for instance, little knowing that it was going to be 5 years and a half before getting back, and that for many of us there'd be very cold winters in a place like Glasgow.
We sat on deck on the way across to Weymouth, and it was excitement, really, but we wondered why the grown-ups were upset and the mothers crying.
We were down below. Well, we got ashore and we were taken to this school and given some food and taken to a large room to spend the night. And there was straw on the floor to sleep on. And there were a couple of camp beds for the very old, like my great-grandmother. But the rest of us bedded down like animals, really. And lots of people had come through. You must remember this was just after Dunkirk, and there were lots and lots of refugees coming through of all nationalities, and the place I recollect was popping with fleas.
We were evacuated from here with the school, our parents to Glasgow, and we went from Rochdale to Cheshire and had to wait
for 6 months till our parents found a home to have us all back.
We slept in a cinema when we got to Weymouth, and then we went up by train up to Glasgow. And the first night we were there, they had their first air raid.
Hitler, like Queen Victoria, recognised the strategic importance of Alderney and invested huge amounts of effort, materials and labour fortifying the island. In total, 90,000 cubic metres of concrete were used to build major defensive structures, including this impressive anti-tank wall here at Longey. With all this construction, the one thing that was for certain is that the island the people would return to would be a very different island to the one they left.
I think for the majority of them, they were horrified when they saw what had happened to Alderney, because now it's been softened, things have grown over, but at the time when they arrived and looked up on the Roselle Point there, Bibette, to see all the huge bunkers and everything, I mean, most houses had a bunker in their garden. You know, you walk in, your house is derelict and you've got a huge concrete bunker, and I think they were just really distressed. I think a lot of them thought they'd made the wrong decision in coming back. It was a lot of work for them.
So much work had been done by the British Army in preparation for the homecoming, because it was 6 months or more between the actual liberation of the island and the homecoming. And by that time, about 350 houses had been made habitable. And it was mainly the British troops who did that. They also had to supervise Germans who had laid mines in Alderney in order to have them removed before the islanders came back.
I did pass remark at the time, heaven help the people when they come back here and try to make a life again on Alderney, because I really sort of sat down one day and thought, well, I wouldn't like the job of coming back here and having to take up life again in the amount of devastation that existed here.
I was just 6 when we came back in December, and I think I can remember being told we're going home, and it didn't mean a lot to me because I didn't know where home was. And I can remember the crossing on the auto carrier. It was a night crossing and very rough, and we all had to stay below deck in the cabin. We weren't allowed on top. And as it got towards daylight, I saw all the people approaching the portholes, a lot of excitement, and some of the older ones started to cry. And then the boat must have rounded the breakwater, and in the calmer waters of the harbour, I leapt up to see what all the excitement was about, and I was violently ill. I'd been fine up till then, but I can just remember the older people very upset, and I didn't understand why.
Everybody was so anxious that morning to see Alderney as we came into the harbour. What did we see? The breakwater with massive holes in it. Unbelievable. Then to see all the changes in the harbour, the German jetty, all the massive cranes. It was then that scene changed when we got up to St Anne's. Bray Street was a ruin, absolute ruin. Platzeline, there was no houses left. Quite unbelievable.
It was a lovely moment because the Salvation Army band was on the quay as well from Lille and Guernsey. And as we were coming down, as they call it, the roads towards the harbour, one of our men, John McCartney, a Salvationist, with a bugle to his lips and played Home Sweet Home. And that was there was a few tears then.
When we got to the island and boat tied up, there was Germans on the jetty, which didn't go down very well. And then we were taken up to the Grand Hotel, where we were billeted. Well, I think we only stayed there one night because there was no glass in the windows. There was pig wire at the windows. There was rats gnawing all night at the floorboards. And the next day we went to see our house, which only had a front door and a back door. All the other doors the Germans had burnt to keep themselves warm.
Well, the feelings were that there were so many people there. There were all the British troops lined up, and all the dignitaries of the island were standing under a huge arch with "Welcome Back Home" on it. There were two or three of the shopkeepers were there, and WVS. Everyone was there ready to look after us when we got back.
We had about 5 or 6 Germans, prisoners of war, attached to the Campania to rebuild it, who were very, very kind to Sally and I. They used to make us beautiful wooden toys, decorated toys. I think they must have spent all their pocket money on us, virtually. But yes, then they were there for a good, I suppose, 5 or 6 months after the war to help rebuild.
There were so many trenches and bunkers to explore. There was 4 big guns on the cliff still in working order, a rangefinder in working order, and that was, you left home if you could get out of work, and you just went exploring, which I think when you look back on it, some of it was dangerous because there were still places that had barbed wire and mine notices around, but you sort of kept shy of those. But it was exploring the bunkers and trenches and finding bullets and that. And of course, the lads, the biggest thing was, I wonder if we can find a German Luger in this bunker and things like that. So that was all the adventure.
It was all barbed wire and empty homes and terrible, really. Rats everywhere. But it all came together again. And as I say, the only jobs they were for us was the communal farm.
It was just overgrown and lots of rats. I remember the rats because I thought they were cats, Alderney cats.
To me, if I thought I had to walk out of my front door now and turn a key and everything was left there, it would be more than heartbreaking. And it makes you wonder how some of them ever got over it, really.
We were the first one to go into Fort Albert when the Germans left. And believe you me, the stuff that was in Fort Albert they left behind was absolutely fantastic. You know what I mean? And it's mostly all gone now, sort of thing. All the German stuff we sort of picked up, but there we are. That's the way it was, you see.
There were some improvements. We had running water in the houses instead of having to fetch it from the Murray pump. And the Germans had made some roads. And there was electricity in practically every house, as far as I remember. So there were some slight improvements.
If children looked ahead 50 years on to 60, we'd had a lovely museum. We had a lot of stuff. We used to just slinging it everywhere. We had jack boots, the German coats. I used to be working in one of them. I still got some of the whistles, actually. We had them on top of and in the top pockets. I suppose if they wanted to blow it, I still got 2 home, actually, of them. I'm going to take them down to the night of the show, just to show a couple of people.
Everybody had nothing. Nobody had a thing. And everybody pulled together. It was like one big family. Everybody looked out for everybody else. It was wonderful. And I just didn't have one lot of great-grandparents. All my friends' grandparents were my grandparents. It was wonderful. It was just one big, happy community. You didn't have a lot. And the friends I made that were on that boat coming back with me, they're still my great friends today.
Coming back after the war was a different kettle of fish. Community was very divided, very bitter. There was no peace in the community. A lot of people came back and saw the condition of the island and the prospects, and they went back to England where they'd had jobs. But for those few years from 1946 to 1948, it was really a very unpleasant place to live. The community were divided, very bitter. things went wrong, and in the end we had the Home Secretary. I don't know if you know this, but the Home Secretary, which was unusual in those days, he made 2 visits to Alderney. One, he stayed overnight and met all the people in what is then the old Arsenal in Oliver Street, which was a community centre. And from then on, things quietened down. The Home Office recommended the change of the Constitution from our old to the new, so we no longer would have a Crown-appointed head of the island, and it would be by election. And I'm not sure that that was the right direction to take with hindsight.
What annoys me is you hear this rubbish about the Battle of Buttes. Do you know they would come to your house and say, do you want a wardrobe? And you say, no, that's too shabby, I don't want it. So they took it down to Buttes. Nobody wanted this stuff. Well, in there, when you hear about people fighting for the furniture, we didn't fight for the furniture. It was all good humour.
This battle on the Buttes, which was set up by somebody, was degrading. Really degrading. And then people rushed in and claimed stuff which was not theirs, and there was unpleasantnesses on everywhere. You know, you've got my things, I've got yours. And it's a period I wish we would forget. I'm rather sorry in one way it's been raised now, because that's not the best part of the island's history.
What saddened us was that so many didn't come back. So many of the old families that we'd known didn't. They stayed. Some came back, but things were so grim because it was a very cold winter, and we didn't have a great deal of possessions to keep ourselves fit with. And when they could, they went back again, which made it even worse. But the few that remained made Alderney what it is today.